Epic Man begins on a dark, stormy night in an ancient Chinese home. The rain pours relentlessly, forming puddles on the ground. Several men in black robes stand lined up, their figures almost blending into the shadows. One of them asks if anyone is present. In the rain, a dirty child stands alone, facing the men. The eerie stillness of their presence sends an unsettling vibe. A man with piercing red eyes watches the boy closely, thinking to himself about the surprising discovery of someone living in the abandoned martial academy. He addresses the boy as a young warrior and asks permission to take shelter for the night from the downpour. The boy studies them, unsure of who these strangers are. He's taken aback by their respectful greeting, given that he's just a child. Perhaps, he thinks, they regard him as the guardian of the deserted academy. Polite, he replies that he too settled in the academy a few years ago. He tells them they are welcome to stay, but points to his own pavilion and asks that they use other areas. The men express their gratitude for the boy's hospitality. The leader then gives a firm order for the men to avoid the boys' pavilion and take shelter elsewhere. "Do you all understand?" he asks. They respond in unison, "Yes." The group disperses to find their own spaces. Curious, the boy looks at the word on their robes, Tang. He wonders if they belong to the same clan and what kind of people they might be. However, his thoughts are interrupted as he remembers that he has more pressing matters. He enters his pavilion, where a shift in mood occurs. The serious atmosphere gives way to a sense of excitement. This is our main protagonist, someone sure to captivate your attention. With joy, the boy calls out to the others for dinner. He opens a large pot to reveal a small, brown insect resembling a cricket. Almost late, he murmurs, realizing the insects must be starving. He opens another pot to reveal a large, cute spider known as the black earth tiger. It's a tarantula native to Hainan, China, and can grow up to 20 centimeters. Its distinctive striped pattern resembles that of a black tiger. Using chopsticks, the boy picks up an insect and feeds it to the tarantula. As Black devours the meal, the boy quietly reflects on how he wouldn't have survived without these companions. Black chomps on the insect contentedly, and the boy watches, pleased with its reaction. He was fascinated by the fact that the creature, which was about the size of a fingernail, had already shed its shell twice. He marveled at its growth, feeling a sense of happiness as he watched it. Black had finally gotten his fill. Next, the boy opened a drawer to reveal an orange lizard with white stripes and B. Wangling cave gecko. Like the others, this native species was distinguished by the stripes running across its body and tail. The boy remarked how difficult it had been to obtain the gecko, especially since he had no money in his previous life. Now, however, he could find them everywhere. Life had become much more enjoyable since he had learned to appreciate simple things like watching these creatures. As he fed the gecko, it suddenly bit him. He yelped in pain, swinging his fingers to shake it off, but the gecko refused to let go. The boy grimaced, but the bite also triggered a wave of memories. He remembered the events before he came to inhabit this body. Before all this, he had been a streamer, a popular one with over 1 million subscribers. Known as Spicy Fab, he was a professional biologist. His main content revolved around venomous insects and animals. But there had been a problem. During a live broadcast celebrating his milestone of 1 million followers, he had showcased the 10 most dangerous vipers in the world. Among them, the black mamba, known for its aggression, stood out. To find it, he had traveled to Africa, but it was there that he met his end. He had told his viewers that he hadn't found the black mamba yet and that it wasn't easy to locate. He decided to take a break and search again. His viewers assured him they would wait. Exhausted, he had been unable to find the snake, but the chat had speculated that it might be hiding in his house. They worried it could bite him. Little did they know, the black mamba he had been searching for was curled up on top of his refrigerator. Before he could react, it struck, and in an instant, he was bitten live on TV. The boy had died, and now here he was in the present. He pouted, thinking about how it had all happened after he had worked so hard searching for that snake. Meanwhile, an elderly man in a black robe stood outside the pavilion door, knocking. He called out to the young warrior. The boy opened the door and asked if there was something wrong. The man responded, expressing his gratitude for the shelter from the rain and invited the boy to dinner. They had caught a deer. The boy's eyes lit up with excitement upon hearing the offer. He had always enjoyed meat, but until now, the only meat he could eat was snakes and lizards. He eagerly accepted the invitation and made his way to where the others were gathered. They had set up a bonfire, and around it, they watched as the deer cooked. The elderly man noticed the boy drooling at the sight of the meat and chuckled. He told the boy that the deer would take time to cook, and in the meantime, he asked if it would be alright to ask a few questions. The boy, embarrassed by how long he had been staring at the cooking deer, nodded and gave the elder permission to ask. The elder asked if the boy was living alone and how old he was. The boy wasn't sure if he was 14 or 15. He decided to make up a story, saying that he had suffered a head injury when he was younger, which caused him to forget many things, including his exact age. The elder then asked if the boy was really living by himself. He replied affirmatively, explaining that he didn't have any particular talent, so he caught snakes and sold their skins to survive. The elder seemed shocked by the boy's dangerous lifestyle and asked if he wasn't afraid of it. The boy shrugged, saying he was used to it. Someone brought over the cooked meat, offering them a portion to eat first. The elderly man, noticing how hungry the boy seemed, remarked that the young warrior must have been starving. The boy thanked the elder and eagerly bit into the meat, savoring it. It had been a long time since he had eaten anything like it. As he chewed, he thought to himself, "This is happiness." The older man watched him happily, and then told him to listen closely while he ate. The elder explained that they were searching for something and asked if the boy had seen anything unusual lately. The elder hesitated, wondering whether he should share this information. However, the white-haired elder spoke up, telling the patriarch that since they owed the young warrior, it might be acceptable to tell him. Also, since the boy likely didn't know much, he wouldn't cause trouble, and since he lived alone, he wouldn't share the information with anyone else. The patriarch agreed with the white-haired elder and began to speak. They were searching for a centipede with a blue spot on its body. The boy was surprised to hear this and asked what they called it. The patriarch explained that it was known as the blue spot centipede. It was quite large, and they thought the boy might have seen it. Curious, the boy asked, "How big is it?" The patriarch replied, "If it's an adult, it could easily swallow someone as big as you." The boy turned pale upon hearing about a centipede so large that it could swallow a person. He thought to himself that maybe he was wrong to assume he had merely traveled a few hundred years back in time, perhaps he was in an entirely different world. The white-haired man reassured him, telling him not to worry as they were about to capture the creature. The boy asked if they were planning to catch it and raise it. The elder seemed puzzled by the mention of raising it, while the white-haired elder chuckled. Eventually, he let out a loud laugh, finding the idea of raising a blue spot centipede highly amusing. The patriarch smiled and commented, "The young warrior is so funny." The white-haired elder shook his head and replied, "There's no way we could raise it. Our plan is to use it as medicine." The boy was confused, his earlier assumption about these men being traitors now seeming off. Instead, he began to suspect they might be involved in something more illicit. He asked, how could centipedes be used as medicine? The white-haired man explained that his granddaughter was gravely ill and confined to bed. The inner core of the centipede was the only thing that could save her, so they were desperately trying to find one. The boy listened, piecing things together, and the patriarch confirmed his suspicions. The granddaughter of the white-haired elder was, in fact, his daughter. To the boy, it seemed they were willing to go to extreme lengths to help her, even if it meant feeding her something as unusual as a centipede. Though he didn't believe a centipede could truly be medicinal, he understood that there was nothing a parent wouldn't do for their child. Feeling sympathy for the man and for the centipede, whom they had treated as a means to an end, the boy decided to help them. He began to speak about the centipede and the patriarch immediately asked if the boy had seen the centipede. The boy replied that he hadn't, but added that although he didn't know exactly what a blue spot centipede was, he might have an idea of where to find one. Despite having died from a snake bite in his previous life, the boy Spicy Fab was more confident than anyone when it came to venomous creatures. Out of the 8.7 million known species on Earth, around 20,000 are venomous, and he had them all stored in his mind. Of course, centipedes were no exception. When it came to venomous animals, everything was at Spicy Fab's fingertips. He was, in essence, a walking encyclopedia of venomous creatures. The boy recalled everything he knew about centipedes, as if flipping through the pages of a book in his mind. He scanned the mental pages, and after a few seconds, he closed the book in his head, having found the information he needed. Back in the present, he told the elder that he might know where to find the centipede. The men were startled, eager to know where he thought they might be able to locate it. The boy asked about the areas the elders had already searched. They mentioned they had searched to the north and east of the academy, mostly during the day, with a focus on the riverside in the north. The boy wasn't surprised that they hadn't been able to find it. He explained, "Of course, you couldn't find it." The elder asked, "What do you mean?" The boy continued, "Centipedes belong to the Arthropoda phylum and Kyopo class, meaning they cover a wide range of habitats. Being cold-blooded, they require shelter to regulate their temperature and humidity." He added, "Another interesting fact is that unlike most insects, which have a waterproof coating, centipedes have weak waterproofing and pores on their exoskeletons. This means they don't actually prefer wet places. They're creatures that need high humidity but dislike being in wet areas. They can't survive for long without water, though." The boy paused, then said, "So, the blue spot centipede isn't likely to be found in jungles or near rivers." The elders were shocked by this, as they had thought centipedes preferred environments like rotten wood or cracks. The boy corrected them, saying, "You might find smaller centipedes in those places, but you're looking for a big one. For larger centipedes, they can't stay in jungles or along the riverbanks because they need to hide more effectively." The elders exchanged glances, silently communicating, before they asked, "Where can we find it?" The boy smiled and pointed to the west. "Search in the Rocky Mountains. Centipedes like to rest under warm rocks during the day and roam at night." He added, "If you find it, I expect a big reward." The elders nodded in agreement, and a few hours later, they were on their way to the Rocky Mountains. The men searched diligently, with the patriarch standing atop a tall, narrow rock, watching intently. One of the men approached him and suggested that the young warrior might be wrong. "Let's call it a day," the patriarch ordered. He signaled for the arrow, which was fired to mark the end of the search. The men gathered around the bonfire, exhausted but still hopeful that the young warrior's information was correct. They couldn't understand why they hadn't found the centipede, but something about the young warrior made them believe in him. His intelligence seemed undeniable. The patriarch remained silent for a moment, then, with a pained expression, he muttered, "My daughter Hun is considered the most exceptional talent in the history of the Tang family. Has the heavens truly abandoned her?" Just then, someone announced the return of the Grand Patriarch. The patriarch welcomed him back, and they all gathered around the bonfire. If you like my video, please share and subscribe.